In January 1999, the British Post Office introduced a new computer system. It was called Horizon. It was developed by Fujitsu. At the time it was introduced, it was the largest non-military IT project in Europe. By the end of that same year, 1999, Fujitsu's own engineers had identified bugs in the system, errors in the way it calculated cash balances, defects that caused the system to show money missing from branch accounts when no money was actually missing. The post office was told, and then the post office began prosecuting sub-postmasters for the shortfalls the computer had invented. That is the post office Horizon scandal. Not a story of one mistake or one bad decision, a 16-year program of prosecution, more than 900 people charged, convicted, imprisoned, bankrupted, driven to breakdown, built on computer evidence that the organization running the prosecutions knew was unreliable. It is the largest miscarriage of justice in British legal history, and as of 2026, nobody from the post office or Fujitsu has been arrested or charged with any criminal offense. My name is the voice behind Creepy Chronicles, and this investigation is about something that affects every person who has ever trusted an institution to tell the truth about them. The sub-postmasters at the center of this scandal were not criminals. They were ordinary people, mostly middle-aged, mostly with families, mostly with decades of service to their communities, who ran post office branches in towns and villages across Britain. They were trusted figures, people whose neighbors brought them their savings, their pension forms, their parcels, and then the computer said money was missing, and the post office said it was their fault, and everything that followed destroyed them. Horizon was introduced to replace a paper-based accounting system. Its purpose was to track cash flows in and out of post office branches, recording transactions, calculating balances, flagging discrepancies. When the balance at the end of a day did not match what should have been there, Horizon flagged a shortfall. Sub-postmasters were personally liable for shortfalls under their contracts. If Horizon said money was missing, they were expected to make it good from their own funds. Many did, spending savings, borrowing money, remortgaging their homes, trying to cover discrepancies they could not explain because they had not stolen anything. When they reported the discrepancies to the post office, they were told the system was robust and that the problem was on their end. When they pressed further, they were investigated. When the investigations found no explanation for the shortfalls, because there was none, because the money had never been missing in the first place, some were prosecuted. The post office brought private prosecutions. It used Fujitsu's Horizon data as the primary evidence. And in court, when defense lawyers or the defendants themselves raised questions about the reliability of Horizon, the post office told the court, and the post office's lawyers told the court, that Horizon was reliable, that it was accurate, that it contained no bugs. That was not true. And the post office knew it was not true. The human cost of what happened is documented in the Post Office Horizon Inquiry's published findings. At least 13 people whose lives were destroyed by the scandal took their own lives. Dozens more suffered serious mental health crises. Marriages ended. Families collapsed. People who had spent decades building something in their communities lost everything. Their businesses, their savings, their reputations, their freedom, and were left with a criminal record for a crime they had not committed. Some of those people spent years in prison. Some are still waiting for compensation. Some have died waiting. The scandal was first reported by Computer Weekly in 2009. Nick Wallace, a journalist, spent 15 years reporting on it, filing story after story that received limited mainstream attention. Parliamentary questions were asked. The post office denied any systemic problem. Legal challenges mounted. The post office spent millions defending its position. The turning point came in 2019. A High Court judge, after a lengthy civil case brought by 555 sub-postmasters, ruled that Horizon did indeed contain bugs, errors, and defects. The post office settled the case for £58 million, but the settlement terms meant that after legal fees, many claimants received far less than their losses. Criminal convictions, however, require a separate process. The Criminal Cases Review Commission began reviewing cases. By 2024, only 93 of the more than 900 wrongful convictions had been overturned. In January 2024, ITV broadcast a 4-part drama called Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, starring Toby Jones. The public response was extraordinary. A story that journalists had been reporting for 15 years finally reached a mass audience. Public anger reached a level that forced political action. Rishi Sunak announced emergency legislation to exonerate the wrongfully convicted. Parliamentary committees demanded answers from Fujitsu and the Post Office. On the 19th of January 2024, Paul Patterson, the European CEO of Fujitsu, appeared before the public inquiry. What he admitted under questioning was extraordinary in its directness. Patterson confirmed that there were bugs, errors and defects with the Horizon software right from the very start. He confirmed that these bugs were well known to all parties, meaning known to Fujitsu and known to the post office. He confirmed that witness statements used in the prosecutions of sub-postmasters were misleading because Fujitsu had provided incomplete audit data to the post office and had not disclosed to the court that the data was incomplete. He described the concealment of evidence about Horizon's defects during the prosecution of innocent people as shameful. He described the concealment of evidence about Horizon's defects during the prosecution of innocent people as shameful. He also confirmed that Fujitsu had a moral obligation to contribute to the financial compensation of victims. He did not confirm when, how much, or on what timeline that contribution would be made. As of 2026, the accountability gap remains wide open. The Metropolitan Police has opened a criminal investigation into the post office. No arrests have been made. No charges have been filed. The investigation is ongoing. Fujitsu announced in January 2024 that it would impose a voluntary moratorium on bidding for new British government contracts while the scandal was under investigation. Between May and September 2024, the British government awarded Fujitsu an additional £362 million in contracts to ensure the continuation of public services. The company, whose software destroyed 900 lives, received hundreds of millions of pounds of public money. In the same year, its CEO admitted the destruction was built on evidence that was shameful and false. Chronicles investigates the cases the official record would rather you found complicated rather than clearly wrong. Every Thursday and every Sunday. Real, documented, told without apology. 900 people, 16 years, at least 13 lives. Bugs that were known from the very start. Evidence that was deliberately withheld. Prosecutions that continued after the post office knew its system was unreliable. And as of today, nobody in jail, nobody charged, nobody arrested. Share this with someone who still believes that in Britain, institutions are held accountable for what they do. The post office says it has learned lessons. 13 people are not here to see what those lessons cost.